Hi guys, good evening. This is Dr. Jenny Yusuf, physical therapist and Doctor of Physical Therapy, creator and founder of Balance and Fall Support Group in Aging Adults and Fishigen PT and Wellness. So every Thursday we have this what we call as Thanks God is Thursday. And for tonight, we are going to highlight an innovator and also he is a master of technology. He has a background in masters of business management and of course information technology and engineering. So combine this, of course, he's a great innovator and of course educator. He is one of the CEO and co-founder of Busy Network and of course Vestibular First. We always familiar with the Vestibular First. They are really the foundation of all about dizziness, what is vertigo, anything about that. And of course, the technology behind it. So if you see in CSM, of course, and if you have a small clinic about vestibular, you probably use all those goggles and they are one of the innovators, so economical. And of course, we will talk about how it comes up, what's the region behind it, and also another different innovations that are innovator here and scientists in front of
Mm.
us we're going to talk more about it. So without further ado, we have Patrick Esmonde, CEO and co-founder of Busy Network and of course Vestibular First. Hi, how are you,
Hello,
Patrick?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I was caught off guard there. You don't put your name there and then you just put Vestibular First. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So Patrick Esmond is based in Philadelphia. And tell us more about you. What did I miss? I know you're Master of Science in Engineering. So tell us more.
sure. My background is pretty varied. It start mainly in information technology, doing kind of the basic infrastructure, websites, database. I eventually moved into strategy and helping companies kind of map out their 3 to 5 year technology plan. Um, So it really keeping up with what's new, helping to basically plan for the future, and then being able to implement that for customers.
Mhm.
So I was able to transition some of that into our company, Vestibular First,
Mhm.
which my wife is a physical therapist. You know her, and she needed goggles, and I was able to build her a set. And so that's kind of how the story started.
Yeah. So if ever people doesn't know, Helena Esmond is also the founder or co-founder of Vestibular First, and Patrick Esmond is her spouse, of course. So both of these amazing clinicians, and of course, they are the one who invented this things innovated nowadays are technology. Tell us more about the goggles. Yeah, you said that Helena needs it. So
Yeah.
let's think about how can we produce these things.
Yeah, so the short story is that she worked for a large healthcare system that had access to the existing goggles that are out there. And she found how indispensable they were in terms of giving her more accurate diagnoses, better information, being able to share that information with the patient. Some of these patients have a lot of anxiety or their family members. Like it's like, oh, grandma's just, making it up. Well, when you see the eye movements on the recording, it becomes real to everybody. So we were a growing family, and we wanted to be able to support our kids as they got older with our schedule. And Helena found a clinic that could give her the part-time hours that she needed, but they couldn't afford the $10,000 goggles.
Oh,
So she came home and's like, I really want to get this job. I love the clinic. It's close to the house. They'll give me all the hours I want. But I don't have goggles. Like, can you make me goggles? And I was like, I don't know. I've never even seen them before. So we went up to the clinic. She showed me how they worked. I kind of get a look at it. I went on Amazon. I bought like $70 worth of off-the-shelf parts. And in one evening, I had a working prototype of getting goggles on a screen. I bought an infrared camera, a VR goggle that you could put your smartphone in. So
Wow.
instead of putting the smartphone in, I took the camera and I sewed it with some string and cardboard where the smartphone would go, connected it to the computer, and it wasn't pretty. It didn't have all the functionality. It didn't block light. It didn't do any of the like the core pieces, but it got eyes on a screen, which was
Mhm.
my main goal.
Yeah.
So we since then refined it. Obviously, we got a 3D printer to make it more better than cardboard. We then launched a research version of the goggle where we collect a lot of data around the usage and form and function and fit. We
Mhm.
then proceeded to file for FDA. We hired an engineer. Buying off the shelf, there's pros and cons of that. Like for example, the goggle that we were using, they stopped making it. Well, like we had all this stuff ready for that part. So when you don't control the supply chain, you're kind of you're stuck with whoever makes it. So we then made our own design. That was everything for us, custom made for us. And then we got FDA in 2020 with our new version. And then we've since released two other versions that have been essentially upgrades from the community that they asked. So they were like, we want disposable cushions. Okay, well, let's figure out how that gets modular. We want a faster, a better resolution camera. Okay, we want, we were having we were using one off the shelf clip. Well, the clip was not designed for a goggle. It was designed for a swim goggle. There's different kind of weight and different kind of force. So that was another revision we made. But I will say that we drew a lot of the feedback directly from working clinicians. So we surveyed every single one. We had 600 surveys, and we went through every single line together as a group and said, okay, like, what's the number one feature? What do we have to be concerned about? We did a price sensitivity. Like we knew that price was a big barrier, especially for physical therapists who couldn't bill for having goggles. So we knew that we had to, meet certain budget criteria as well. So with that was really where we started Vestibular First. We were like, okay, well, let's get something that's open source. It works on any laptop. It'll like non-proprietary format. I could walk into any computer today, plug our goggles in, and they'll work. Like you don't even need the custom software. Like the software that's on a
Yeah.
laptop will run it natively. And that's something that came up in our survey that, oh, we have very restrictive IT. Well, okay, do you plug it in? Yes, okay, it works.
Oh.
So, and I will say that it's probably from my IT background. I
Mhm.
knew what the IT security people were going to ask. I knew, for example, we didn't put storage on the device. There's no hard drive on it because as soon as you have a recording on a hard drive, that's a HIPAA issue. And then now we have IT security saying, well, what if someone gets the hard drive and now the iVideos are out? So we designed it in such a way to make it just seamless into the environment that the user was trying to work in.
Oh, good idea. Good point. Didn't think about the hardware and then the HIPAA things there, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah. Do you have it on hand? Because I know it. I see it when you tried it on me in the CSM.
I do. Just
Yeah.
give me one
Yeah, yeah,
second. I
yeah.
didn't have it right here. Give me one sec.
Okay, yeah. But you have done that to me, so I should remind you. Yeah, no problem. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah. Good, that's good. Yeah. So during the CSM last February, guys, I saw Patrick and Helena, and then we tried the goggles itself. So if you're not familiar, the goggles itself, you will see exactly the nystagmus if you're doing your assessment when the person is dizzy, and nystagmus is one of the symptoms that you want to see or elicit when there is like BPPV or any other vestibular things that you want to assess. So with the goggles itself, it will make it more um what they call visualize
Yeah.
exactly, make it more like easy to see, because for us we can see it, but with the goggles itself we can just look in the monitor, and that's more visual. All right. So let's
Can you
see.
see that?
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So here are our goggles, and they're modular, so everything is able to be taken apart and cleaned. So basically, we have the two cameras, one for each eye, and then there's infrared light, and there's a visible light here at the top, and that's for helping to differentiate between central and peripheral issues. And because of our modularity, for example, the straps are able to easily come off. And if a strap breaks, we can just send you out a new strap. You're not going to be down for a lot of time. Even the cushion is removable, so you're able to easily take that out and clean it, go through. I think that one of the issues that we saw was, at least the one I had seen, is it was hard to clean all the different areas. So in this, we can really get in every single nook and cranny and clean out everything. Which when it's on the patient's face, it's like there's makeup or there's oil. So that's something that, that was my observation to say, oh, like, there's a busy clinic and I get it, but I wanted something that was, that everything would be clean. You would never have an issue where you couldn't get into a little corner because it wasn't accessible.
Yeah, that's really good. We say modular. Can you just show it again, the part, Patrick, when you say to distinguish the peripheral and the central? Because
Yes.
they haven't familiar with how to use it too.
So there's two lights at the top that are activated by switches.
Mm.
And essentially, those are actually visible lights. So the infrared lights is when the patient's in the dark, and that way you actually do want to block light. So that's actually an important thing because your vision can essentially suppress abnormal eye movements.
I will turn
Well,
off you mean I will turn off the external light or
no, the
yeah.
goggles themselves, it's
Okay.
light tight. So if I put this on
Mm-hmm.
myself, I won't be able to see anything in here.
Okay, so that is the in the dark now. That's why
That's in the dark, but then I
okay.
can turn these lights on specifically, and it's not plugged in, but when they're
Uh-huh.
plugged in, two little white LEDs will come on.
Oh, okay.
And then you use that to actually, it's a test that you do. So you see whether the nystagmus, whether it subsides or whether it doesn't subside. And that
Okay.
that will tell a clinician who's trained whether it's a peripheral issue with the inner ear or whether it's a central issue with the
Mhm.
brain.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, because I
Yes,
keep thinking also what else that how does it really works more because we have this and then at least it's more easy to listen, easy to see because you can really
yes,
miss it and
yes,
just by that. So once you have it, so because you did it in the CSM, so you're just looking on the camera. I'm sorry, in the big
yes. The
screen.
display. You would look at the computer or whatever
Okay,
you
so
have it
I will be in
connected
the
to.
computer. Okay,
Yep, yep.
so it
And
will.
I like the goggles themselves don't give a diagnosis. The
Mhm.
clinician, it's like a stethoscope.
Okay,
It gives the clinician better information and it gives them more information.
okay.
And the ability to record is actually really important because especially as a beginner, you may have missed it. Some of these eye movements are very, very quick and they
Mm-hmm.
have a torsional or a twisting
Mm-hmm.
component. And as a beginner, that can be really hard to see without training.
It's true.
So if you get a recording, you can go to your mentor and say, "Hey, I had this patient. Here's what I saw," and then they can walk you through
Yeah.
and actually like explain stuff.
And then when you ask your mentor, and then he will ask you, is it horizontal or vertical? Oh my gosh, I didn't know. How can we go back?
Right.
Yeah,
And
right?
because they happen so quickly, and
Yes.
part of the part of the other advantage of having a recording is that, during the nystagmus, the patient is feeling terrible. Like it's triggering symptoms of nausea and the room is spinning. Like you're doing it to trigger it on purpose to see what's going on, but
Yes.
you wouldn't want them to do that twice just because you missed it.
Yeah,
So
I
if you
like
get them
that.
to do it once, you can have someone else look at it with you and you can learn from it. And then that actually becomes the basis of cases. You can then present on that and say, here's a case, 55 years old.
Oh,
Here's
nice.
what I saw with the right Dix Hall Pike. And you can say, what do you think, class? What
Uh-huh.
direction is it going? And then
Yeah,
you don't have to have the patient there for it because you're able to, kind of play it back. So the recording aspect of it, someone who's very experienced, they don't need the recording. They can just look at it live. But
mhm.
it's extremely helpful for education, and it's pretty much essential if you're just starting out because
Yeah,
you want to be able to review it with yourself, and it's also helpful to show the patient and say,
yeah,
hey, look, like these are the symptoms. You're not crazy. Like these are real symptoms that are occurring, and and we're going to help you. And this is like we know the science enough now that I can tell what's going on based on how your eyes are moving.
that's true. At least they can see, oh, this is how I look like. You remember when I see my
Yeah.
eyes after that
Yeah.
assessment, and you
Yep.
will really know that this is
You get
really
to
what's
see it.
happening. And then I like when you say that, at least now I will tell my husband that this is really how it goes. This is
Yes.
how
Well,
really.
a lot of vestibular disorders, they call them like invisible disorders or invisible diseases because, feeling dizzy, it's not like a broken arm that you can look at and say, "Oh, it's broken." Like if these are things that are happening inside the person's, a lot of it in their head, and if they have repeated symptoms that aren't always, they don't react the same way, or they have different they maybe sometimes it happens, but sometimes not. And they're like, oh, well, maybe they made it up. Like, and this is something that's objective, something you can then say, look, no, this is actually occurring, and it's occurring under these like specific circumstances. But this is something that they're going through, and it makes the invisible visible. And that's
Yeah.
something that I feel our goggles definitely add to the patient. It gives the patient confidence
Mm-hmm.
that the clinician has the skill set to help them. And then
Yeah.
it also helps communicate that to their caregivers to say, look, like they're not making this up. This is like objectively measured, and we have people who know how to solve it, So it actually builds a lot of confidence for everybody involved.
Yeah, I like when you say that this is really good for research because they have
Oh,
now
yeah.
the data, and
Yes.
also they will going to show. Speaking of that, you also invented this anatomical like the inner ear. Do you have it
Yes.
with you? Yeah,
I
I
do. I
that's
did
why I
I did
said
bring that up.
yeah, I really like it, but it's still not out, right? But that's for educational purposes. Yeah. Can
Yes.
you share it with us,
So, of
Patrick?
course, of course. Yep. So,
It's big.
this is what we have. This is the prototype. So is that able to be seen there? I tried to keep the background dark. So essentially, and I told you a little bit in the intro, but I built these models for myself because I'm trying to better understand the kind of the science and the engineering behind the inner ear so I can understand the company better and what we're doing. So this is a model that is in development, but so for example, this is the horizontal canal, and if I move just along that plane, it'll just light up the horizontal canal. And this is the anterior canal. And if I move just along that plane, if you notice, the blue canal doesn't light up anymore, just the green. That's because your inner ear is basically like an XYZ plane. It actually has three planes of motion, and these canals isolate the motion to these sensors here at the end that are essentially accelerometers, and they help orient your brain, and they give it's usually not like this. Sometimes you can move your head just left and right and it'll do that, but most motion is a combination of those things. So your brain is able to interpret the signals that are coming from these three sensors. There's also two more hidden in here that I'll be integrating as well with little lights. That's not there yet, but it's in a prototype. To be able to
Nice.
demonstrate that there's five sensors in each ear, and each of them basically work on different types of motion. This is a rotational motion, and there's two more that work on linear motion. So if you notice when I go up and down, none of them light up, and that's on purpose because this is not rotational movement. This is a
Yeah.
linear movement.
Okay.
But if
Okay.
I go back and forth, they're not going to light up either because this is not rotational motion. And so the other two organs, the otolith organs,
Mm-hmm.
that's actually what got a lot of likes and shares on LinkedIn. Oops, sorry, my chair. I hit the thing on my chair. Um, Basically, if you move the model up and down, one of the lights one of the lights illuminated. If you move side to side, the other light illuminated because you have two other sensors that are detect linear motion, either forward and back, left and right, or up and down. So I'll have all five of them in the final version. But
Ah.
right now, this is just showing this. I also built in a few different modes. There's like a button down here. So if I
Mm.
push the button,
Wait.
I want to show you. So if you can tell, if I go one way, it's blue, and the other way, it's pink. Do you see that there? I'm not sure how clear it is on the video.
Yeah, there is like a, oh, give me a second. I'll make it like gallery. So I see, yeah, the
So if
blue
I move one
is,
direction, it's
yeah,
blue, and the other direction, it's pink
it become purple
or
on my,
purple. Yep,
ah, okay, okay,
there we
because
go.
it's not
So on the
pink.
purple, there we go. So on the purple side, that's another kind of electrical property of this organ is that this sensor down here can actually tell whether you're moving towards it or if you're moving away from it.
Mm.
And that's something that actually, from a vestibular clinician point, a viewpoint, they need to know that because this will show that this blue or purple will actually show differently in the eye movements.
Mm-hmm.
Like it'll
Okay.
react differently whether it's being excited, which is this is excitatory is the purple, and inhibitory is the blue. And those movements actually show up a little bit differently in the eye movements. And that's
Mm.
something that I built in. I was like, well, how do I know what's excitatory, inhibitory?
Yeah.
And they have drawings, but having something in your hand to be able to show, oh, look, oh,
Yeah.
excite, inhibited, excited, like that's
Yes.
something that, again, from as a beginner, I want to build something that someone can get their hand on and actually move around and say, well, what if I do this? Or what if I twist it this way?
Yeah.
And that's something that that's why I like building these things because it helps make something that is a little bit hard to understand a little bit more understandable and
Okay.
easy. There's a
That's
few
really
other
good.
modes. So there's one. I'll just show you two other modes that I have. So the crystals, you can get crystals in the canal,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what causes BPPV.
Yeah. Mm.
Well, when you're repositioning the crystals, the canal has to be facing towards the earth, right? So if you notice, these two canals are green right now, but this
Yes.
one is red. Well, as soon as I move this canal parallel to the earth, it's going to go red because now that basically is going to indicate that you can't move the crystals when it's like this. Because if
Mm.
the crystal's in the canal here, it's not going to move to where it needs to go. It's going to get stuck, right? Because it's in a tube. But the idea is to be able to demonstrate essentially the correct position of the canal, so that way that repositioning maneuver will work. So if I have this one parallel to the ground, it's going to turn red, but now the crystals can fall down in these canals correctly. So that's
Mm.
like the other mode that I'm working on. What
That's
will eventually be here, and I think you might have also seen, is I have a second. This is actually a prototype of otoconia. So
okay.
imagine that this is half a circle. That's this model right here. So kind of like this is the analogy here, and this
Okay.
is the otoconia. So when you're working with the otoconia, they have to actually fall down with gravity. And so I built this model. This is a simulation for me to
Mhm.
integrate into the main model. But
Yes.
eventually, the model I just showed you will have this. You'll be able to push a mode, and then an otoconia will show up at one of the cupulas, and you'll have
Mm-hmm.
to move the model in just such a way to where it'll actually clear. It'll go down to the other side.
Yeah. The in
And
each
so
movement. Mm-hmm.
right, and if you move it, so right now I moved it like straight up and down, so it's very fast. But if I move it just at a little bit of an angle, you'll notice that it moves a little bit more slowly. And
Yes.
that's the idea is that, when the canal is green, that'd be this, when it's straight up and down. When a canal is like orange, it's like, it's like 45 degrees. When it's red, it's like this, and the light is not going to move at red. It's going to get stuck right there.
Just parallel.
And
All right.
yep, exactly. So I basically gonna integrate this. I had to build it like this so I can work out the motion. It's easy, it's handheld. This is like a very early, I'll even call it like a proof of concept. It's not even
Mhm.
really a prototype, but I usually build stuff that's small and simple first. So
Yes.
then I can understand the motion, I can play with it, I can tilt it in different ways. And I also have really easy access to the computer, which is right here in the middle. So this is
Hmm.
just it's an Arduino. It's a like a $10 computer. Um,
Computer.
it's a little computer. It only does one thing. So I program it to do certain things. And when you have it accessible like this, I
Hmm.
can move the pins around, I can add stuff to it, I can change it without having to take a model apart or 3D design it. It makes it a lot faster to do the development work on it.
That's
So,
really
yes.
interesting.
So eventually you'll see this
Mhm.
otoconia falling, but you'll see it in this model here. So the idea is like you'll have one, let's say it'll be stuck here at the cupula, and
Yes.
you'll have to move the model in such a way to get that otoconia to fall down so you can actually clear it.
Yeah. So what's the
So
main position first? Just show us. So just position the anatomy inner
sure.
ear in
Yes.
neutral wherever, and then your head as well for our
Sure.
beginners. So this
So
is
this is
exactly,
yes, in the inner
yes,
ear, it's about
yes.
like this. I'm
That's
trying to
how it
get the
looks like,
angle.
guys.
Yep.
And his
So
head is neutral.
the
Okay.
head is neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, like if I had, you would move your
Yeah.
head, in a certain way, and
So
that's where you'd see some
lateral
of the
flexion.
correct. If I go
That
back,
is extension. See the
correct.
movement. Mm-hmm. So
Now,
that's,
my dream is to actually get this into a headband. So you'd actually have two electronic models that would react to all the same motion. So you'd
yeah,
actually be able to you'd be
because
able
we're
to put it
wearing
on
it.
your head. You'd be able to put it
Mm-hmm.
on your head and
Mm-hmm.
actually move the head and move the otoconia out of the canals with an electronic model. We have a version of that now with a headband with
Yeah, that's
there
what
it
I
just
saw one time.
yes. So we have that and that has crystals that's in a fluid. So, but it's not as easy to see in a classroom environment, and also doesn't give you like the red or the green, so it doesn't light up in
Okay.
such a way to help the clinician really better visualize and understand what's the perfect angle for me to be at. Like you want to be green because once you're green, you're in a good solid position for that otoconia to flow. If you're in an orange or a yellow, it's not going to fall as easily. You really want to make sure that you're at an angle to make the otoconia fall very easily.
Mm-hmm.
So my
All right.
dream is to have a headband, but again, you have to, it's like the crawl, walk, run. So like this is going to be crawl. I'm going to get a working version of this. And then once we prove this out and get some feedback from the community, then
Mm-hmm.
we'll integrate it into a headband that then you could then bring to the classroom
Yes.
and then use in training and use to better understand and have a very clean and clear in like visual of how to do some of these repositioning maneuvers.
That's really
So
good.
the other
Congratulations.
modes
Yeah.
I have, this is just an educational mode to say, all
Yes.
right, this is the
Like
horizontal
do.
canal,
Mm-hmm.
this is the anterior. It just lights it up, and this is the posterior. And then of course you got to have a little bit of fun. So I have a party mode. So
So what is the
you
party
know,
mode? Vertigo?
yeah, this is just party mode. This is just to, have fun at the office party, like you put it in the background and you'll have a cool otoconia. I think that's one of my, you got to have fun a little bit. So,
It's nice. I like that.
yes. No, this has no medical connection. This is pure just party mode.
Just party mode.
Yeah.
That's really nice. Congratulations. That's really
Thank
interesting.
you. Thank
Imagine
you.
you really need to study all of this. You really know the terms, all those terms, and you really are part of us already. You're a
Well,
clinician
thank you.
yourself.
Well, I
Because you
like
need to be for you to know it. You're right. You
I've
need to
definitely
learn
on the anatomy side, I definitely have really like literally dove inside the model, like inside the canals to understand
it.
the different angles and the fall rates and the common cruce and how that plays into the movement.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the like the diagnostics and the actual like maneuvers, that's I leave all that to Helena. Like you need a lot of training for that. I don't do anything with patients. You know, this is as I mentioned, like I built these models so I could understand them. And I
Yeah.
know that if I can build it to where I can understand it, even with my knowledge of it now, I want a beginner clinician or even a patient to be able to look at this
Yes, I
and say,
like that.
oh, that's what it is. Like, and if I
Yeah.
move my head, I have to move your head this way. And look, this crystal has to fall, and that's what's actually causing, the nystagmus and the vertigo.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that's an advantage of mine in the sense that I don't have formal training in vestibular because I'm able to look at it and say, huh, well, how would I approach it from having no knowledge on that subject, and how would
That's
I
true.
approach it as a patient? So I think
Yes,
I think it's an advantage that I bring to the industry and to the patients in a way because I can put myself very easily in their shoes
that's true.
and be able to build something that I can just instantly visually and tactily connect with.
That's true. It when we do the vestibular education, so they will send me for vestibular patient, right? So it's not only when you see them, it's not on the spot like assessment. You really are having a time to educate them.
Yeah.
First, not
Yeah.
all of them knows what is vertigo. When they describe
Yeah.
this is spinning and this is how it goes. Have you heard of
Yeah.
the term vertigo? Yeah, I heard it, but they didn't really know the
Yeah.
deeper meaning and how what's happening inside, and that's
Right.
exactly the anatomy, and that's part of your goal to describe it. And once they
Yeah.
really know their diagnosis and why we need to make them dizzy first just to assess,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
we need to make them have the habituation, make them worse
Yeah.
initially, they will
Yeah.
get the purpose. Ah, okay, because I'm giving them a heads up. This
Yeah.
assessment, I will make you dizzy. Why you will do that? But you need to elicit if you're positive. But this
It's true.
definition,
Yeah.
description, this is what you will do, this is what's happening, and this is what's the goal is, something like that, which is really good. I
Yeah.
like and another thing when you say that the goggles a while ago is like, it's not a diagnostic itself, but like a stethoscope to help you to see the diagnosis or
Sure.
the
Yeah.
symptoms. I like that description because like when we have the stethoscope, we really cannot hear let's say the breathing is like
Yeah.
decreased respiration on that part, tachy or brady. But that
Yep.
part you will see like, oh, okay, this is where the symptoms. I like that. So
Yes.
we understand that the goggles is what it does and what it does not, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Good, good.
Absolutely.
So that's amazing. So you keep saying about dizzy and dizziness. So you're also the founder of Dizzy Network, and that's another foundation that we need to look forward as in a clinician aspect. So
Yeah.
can you tell us more about that? This is really great network too.
Sure. Yeah, so Dizzy Care Network is launching this year, and it really came out of a technology that was developed at Mayo Clinic.
Mm,
So Mayo Clinic has a integrated Dizzy clinic where they have multidisciplinary clinicians who work in one area and they work with patients. But they actually had the same problem that we see not only in the US, but all over, which is someone gets dizzy, they go to the emergency room, primary care, or an urgent care. They rule out stroke and heart attack, and then they don't know what to do with them. They send them to the ENT, to the neurologist. On average, and the Vestibular Disorders Association, they found that on average, it's 5 to 7 visits to get a diagnosis, and that's about 6 months. And I heard this from Helena all the time. She would come home and say, "This patient, they've been waiting 6 months. They've seen 5 people. They've had an MRI. They've had meclizine, and they basically everyone missed it. So Dizzy Care Network really is to solve that problem. And the idea is that we're going to take the Mayo Clinic model. So we purchased a company that spun out of Mayo Clinic called Dizzy Guide, which came out probably like 4 or 5 years ago. They tried to launch into other Mayo clinics. So they tried to launch into other large healthcare systems and quickly found out that it's really difficult and expensive to try and integrate the electronic medical records, the privacy issues, the technology, and essentially they went bankrupt. We bought the company out of bankruptcy, and we are basically taking the core science, the matching algorithm. So it's the patient types in their symptoms, and this algorithm that Mayo Clinic developed basically points them to, oh, you have positional vertigo, you should see the PT. Oh, we think it might be you have symptoms of Meniere's, you should go to the ENT. And so it takes this information, it's all patient reported, and it helps narrow down the set of options that they should go see, and it really helps them select the optimal first clinician. So,
Oh,
Helena will tell me, she's like, I can certainly help get the Meniere's patient to an ENT. However, she can't solve the Meniere's. So she sees them for one time, and that's it, because it's one time and says, yeah, I can't help you. You need to go to an ENT. And there are ENTs that are like, oh, like we're not really set up to do positional vertigo here. You should go see Helena. So that's where Dizzy Care Network would come in, is that a patient would put in their symptoms, and the Meniere's patients would get connected to the ENTs, and the positional vertigo patients would get connected to physical therapists or anyone who basically can treat positional vertigo. There's vestibular audiologists that are growing. There's actually occupational therapists that'll do positional vertigo now.
yes.
So we are basically taking that model and going to be launching it out. Instead of it being inside a network, it's going to be something that the general public will have access to.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really helpful for the patients itself, to the clinicians. Yes, and I agree that occupational therapists are also doing the vestibular
they are.
assessment, because the different, let's say the American Institute of Balance, they do it for all, like PT and OT. Even you guys,
Yep.
I'm sure you're doing some certifications or some courses that both caters audiologists, PT, OTs,
We are
So,
multidisciplinary. We
yes,
support, there's 10 different disciplines that actually do vestibular work. Um,
imagine 10.
yeah,
Wow.
10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Audiologist. Mm-hmm.
yep, and there's otologists, neuro-otologists, otoneurologists,
Okay.
chiropractors, PTs, OTs, audiology,
Mm-hmm.
ENTs. Like it's pretty
I missed
impressive.
the part. I missed the Cairo. I didn't think about them.
Chiro, and there's
Yeah.
also neuro-optometrists,
Yes, the opto.
and
Yeah.
then
Talking about.
osteopaths. So osteopath is the last group that's it's a smaller group in the US, but internationally
Yeah.
osteopaths they'll absolutely do that kind of work.
Oh, great to know, because I know the osteopaths, but that's another new thing for me, because I heard about the opto, because they have the
Yep,
neuro and opto, and then I
the
learned about the
neuro-optometrists. Yep,
visual. Yeah,
yep,
because they have this neuro and the brain injury part.
yeah,
But more on the Cairo, and then that's new to me. So at least I learned as well that those are 10. I didn't know. I only maybe
yeah.
know five
Well,
max. I'm
well, I mean,
thinking. Mm-hmm.
unlike so like cardiology, like they own the heart, like there's not a lot of liver doctors that also do heart. But, because the inner ear is deep in the skull, it's
Yeah.
part of the ear, it's also part of the balance system, like
Mm-hmm.
you can see how it's always a specialty within one of those disciplines. So audiology is mainly hearing. However, the next door neighbor of the cochlea is the vestibular apparatus. So kind of while they're in there, or while they're doing work, there's a lot of related tests, and there's a lot of knowledge they gain about the vestibular side of the inner ear that ends up making them really excellent vestibular clinicians as well. So we support all the disciplines, and we really like supporting organizations. For example, the American Balance Society, ABS. They're multidisciplinary, and that's an organization we're trying to actually get more other, like, it started as audiology kind of focus, but more PTs are joining, and we're trying to get a lot of other folks in, because it's when you get different disciplines looking at it from a different angle, you build the knowledge a lot faster. A
That's good.
neuro-otologist actually looks at it differently than an otoneurologist. Even though they sound really similar, their specialty will actually give them a broader set of information to work with. And so
Yeah.
we're the connectors. Like we want all those people to come together, and we just want to build technology and resources that will allow them all to be successful at their work.
You're doing great to correlate and collaborate with that. And with your technology, you really help us a lot and benefits the patients itself. Great technology, and we're learning more
Yeah.
and more. I
Yeah.
remember during the pandemic, I contacted you, and then you invented you remember the first head, what do you call that? The goggles we have when I was in home health. I contacted you guys to make that goggles. And then
Oh, yes.
the
Yes.
first year of that pandemic, and we're looking for that, and that's really nice. Imagine, it's so it's so high tech, and then you just use the 3D, you made that goggles, and then those head, you remember?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
really good. Just you're just thinking, how can you make this, and then voila, let's do this. So that's really
Yes, I think that's probably where the intersection of my skills come together. That, I've done pottery, I've done like woodworking, I've done a little bit of electronics, I've done, just like hand building stuff. But I also, as you mentioned, I'm an educator. I want to teach, I want people to
Mhm.
understand. So when I look at a problem, I say, okay, well, how do I get someone who didn't study this, to
Yes.
understand it? And how do I get them to instantly connect, kind of like, um, eh, without even thinking, kind of like intrinsically understand it almost right away? And
That's
those are like, to me, that's, things that are complex are easy. The things that are simple are hard. So, making something that's very, very simple yet understandable and accurate, like that's my real goal. Like I want something that a researcher can look at and learn
Mhm.
from, but I also want something that a patient can look at and learn from, because there's
Okay.
value on both sides of that equation, that's going to basically make the world a better place without sounding like,
Exactly.
overly optimistic, but like I think incrementally, getting people back to their daily lives,
Mhm.
letting the grandparents play with their grandkids again. Like those are the things that I would want to do. So if I have the skills and talent to be able to do that, I think that's something that it's something that I'm motivated to do, and it just gives me, it's like a sense of empowerment. We just crossed 2 million patients with our
Wow.
goggles, and
Amazing.
Helena did the math, and she's like, even if she worked 24/7 for her whole career, didn't take a break, no vacation, she would never be able to see that many patients in her entire lifetime. So just with that, with our knowledge and skills, and with a lot of work and 700 pages of FDA filings, but like that's something, now we've helped more people with that amount of work just from, this company. And that's just, it's such a great feeling to be able to help so many people at scale. And knowing that that's 2 million people we would have never been able to touch and get a hold of, but they're going back to their lives. Their quality of life has improved. They're able to move more. They're able to exercise again, which we know is going to get them back on their feet, and they're going to recover faster. So
Mm,
this
that's
is a
really
wonderful
good.
feeling.
Yeah, that's a great win. So thank you so much for your contribution. We really appreciate you and Helena. Thank you for your innovations, your
Oh, well, you're
technology.
welcome.
Definitely. So what is your last tip for our patients, our balance and falls member, of course, they have these symptoms as well. They know about dizziness. So what's your closing tip for them?
Yeah, so you had asked me that on the email. I would say once your balance is restored, a really good way of maintaining that is dancing. So Helena and I actually met dancing. We met swing dancing, and we actually met a researcher who was studying the effects of dancing on on basically the elderly, but mainly from 50 years and older. And she found pretty, and it seems intuitive when you think about it, but they had less fall-related injuries. They had better balance scores. They had better cardiovascular health, and they had better social scores. So, social dancing is probably one of the best forms of exercise. It's fun, it gets you moving, it gets your heart going. You get to meet some great friends. Some of actually like two members of our staff were former swing dancers. Like our engineer is a swing dancer. We were able to build a really big community. It's a lot of fun, and even if it's something you can't go out to, even if it's sitting in your chair and dancing or just standing by yourself and dancing, just building up that balance and challenging your balance a little bit actually has really good long-term effects. You're going to be much more likely to recover or catch yourself before a fall. You're going to be you'll because with dancing you're at the edge of balance. You're extending your balance, you're receiving balance, and you're basically exchanging balance with a partner. And but you have to maintain your own. And part of that is understanding where you're at, what's your backup plan in case that falls through. So I would just say go dance.
Yes, yes, that's true. And not only that, the benefits of the dancing definitely for the brain. It's been tested already that dance is great for our patients, preventing dementia, and of course,
Yeah.
dementia itself, Parkinson's
Yep.
disease, any injury. So we even use dancing for our patients with Parkinson's to improve
Wonderful.
their mobility, the speed, the tempo, and then
Yep.
also the same thing. That's the last thing that they forgot, music
Yeah.
in people with
Yeah.
dementia. So that's really
Yeah.
powerful. I like that you emphasize that to our viewers. So thank you so much, Patrick. I learned a
Thank you
lot
for
from
having
you.
me.
Thank you and congratulations to all your innovations, your technology, and we really appreciate you and Helena. All right.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
You too. And how can we connect with you? Tell us.
So the only channel that I really have time for is LinkedIn. So I welcome invitations on LinkedIn. I love to see what people are working on. A lot of our models are actually for you can print and download for free. So I love when people go to our website, vestibularfirst.com, and they look just if you search for 3D, you'll see a page for 3D projects, and they're all free. So as long as you're not selling them, like you can print them for yourself. So I love when people make like with like cool colors or it's like glitter and they have it and they get to, I love when people do that. I also like to see what people's projects are and the research and stuff. So feel free to please connect with me on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, if you have any questions, connect with Patrick Esmonde. And of course, they are from Vestibular First, CEO and co-founder of Dizzy Network. And these are very approachable and we learn from them. Thank you, guys. And thank you so much, Patrick. Have a good night. Bye,
Thanks, Dr.
guys.
Jenny.
Yes, it's me again, Dr. Jenny from Balance and Fall Support Group in Aging Adults and Fish Gen PT and Wellness. All right, good night.